Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we are going to do a should you poll on the basically the Seymour banner. So there's actually going to be two banners coming up here that we're going to talk about. So basically the notable characters I'll put on the second set I'm going to talk about. So within both of these banners we're going to see Prish, Trey, and King all come back. Now I have them all sitting here because they all come back, but they're not like rework characters, they're just getting force enhancements. So nothing too crazy here. King is just kind of a generic-ish type of damage dealer. He doesn't do anything crazy. He's range damage. He has where he does like extra follow-ups and stuff, which is kind of cool. Like his damage is okay, but there really isn't anything like too special about King. I think the most notable thing about King is actually his sphere is really good. So if you get King EXs and like max him out, he's got a sphere that's like 20% attack up when you break a target, which is really good on like re-break characters. So King has like actually one of the better H spheres in the game, but King as a character, like compared to other modern damage dealers that you'd be using, there really isn't a place for him on your party right now, especially like without a rework or anything right now. Trey has always been kind of like a cool character. Like I do like Trey. He is a trap based character, so if you really like traps, Trey can be kind of cool for that. And he can dish out pretty good damage with his traps, right? So if you like kind of that off turn trap base, like Trey's fine, because Trey fits in better than say someone like King, because Trey like makes more sense as like kind of your slot 3 character where you would still have like a main DPS and a main support, and then Trey would just be there to like add on traps on the end. But I still don't think you should go in here gunning for Trey, right? So characters like Trey and King, they're just like, if you get them while going for the other character is great. If you don't get them, don't put in extra resources to max them out, right? Now Prish is a character I really like, and she is a fairly good damage dealer. The problem with Prish is she's just way overshadowed by other damage dealers right now, and she doesn't have an FR or anything. So she's got a BT, and her BT effect is pretty cool. Her BT effect makes it so that your party does extra brave damage, right? The problem with Prish is like, even if you want her for that BT effect to like get extra brave hits on say like a Tifa or something like that, you're then wasting a party slot on a second DPS where you'd rather have like another support or like an off-turn damage dealer, right? So Prish is really good if she's like your best damage dealer and like in the damage dealer slot, like with a different FR, I think she could put up some good numbers, right? The problem is if you're a player that's been keeping up with modern characters, you're going to have like a Tifa or a Vaughn or, Renoa, like one of these big time damage dealers, or even Anna Crow now is stepped into the mix as like a ridiculous, insane damage dealer, right? So there really isn't a place for Prish. She would be good for like, say, lockout content where like maybe you need a lot of different characters, right? And you need an extra DPS. But where we're at in the game right now, she's not a character you really want to use your BT materials on. She's probably not a character you want to blue right now. Now, I greened and blued her on her last time she came back with her C90, and she was really busted then. Like, she was like a top tier DPS, right? Now, just returning with force enhancement, she isn't really up to par with other DPS characters. So I don't know that I would recommend anybody summon for Prish, right? So that being said, let's look at the 3 characters that are getting reworks, right? So these are all the characters getting reworks. Now, Fang and Guy are going to be split onto different banners. So one is going to be with like Prish's BT and the other one's going to be with Seymour's BT, right? Guy is a character I've never really cared about that much. He's kind of like a defensive-ish character. He can do a little bit of healing, right? He's kind of like a tanky, healy type character. So if you need that type of character, sure. His damage isn't going to be like insane or anything like that, but he does get a rework. So at least he's got like an upgrade here, right? Basically, he just gets a little bit more damage, better brave gains. He gets like a little bit more excess healing that he gets. He does add some more like brave damage resist to the party and things like that, and more brave gains, as I mentioned. So yeah, he gets a fine upgrade, but it's nothing that's like, oh my god, you all need to have Guy, right? So he's not like crazy. So once again, I would still consider Guy kind of like in the realm of those other characters where like you really don't want a gun for him, but if you get him on the way to a different character, sure. Fang is kind of an interesting character. She's kind of like a damage dealer slash launcher slash, I think she's got a few debuffs in there. But once again, Fang isn't like really lighting it up. She's not like the best at anything she does. She's not going to, even with her rework, she's not like the best damage dealer out there. But she can launch fairly consistently. But once again, if you've got Selfie or Reigns, which we just had Reigns, you really probably aren't going to need Fang as your primary launcher. So she's one of those characters, kind of like how Guy is, right? Where neither of them are bad characters. It's just in the meta right now, there's just plenty of characters better than them that you can run, right? So probably don't recommend going for them either. Now Seymour is kind of like the big character that's dropping, right? So Seymour is getting his FRBT. And the thing with Seymour is, as good as he is, or as good as he can be, I'm just not a fan of the way they set him up, period. And so the way that Seymour is set up, he's meant to get stronger as the enemies get weaker. And to me, it contradicts force time a little bit. So I'll talk about that and like kind of how you would use this guy. But what's going to happen is at the beginning of a fight, he's probably going to start off like about average to maybe a little bit below average on damage. But once you get the enemies below 50%, like his damage is insane. And he's looking like crazy good, right? So a lot of his kit revolves around like his buffs, his damage, all of that. Basically, there's like an 80% threshold and like a 50% threshold. And as the enemies go below each of those HP thresholds, he gets a lot more improvement on basically his buffs and his damage. Now something to note is if you're doing multiple enemies and one enemy falls below the threshold, he will get the better threshold, even though there's another enemy with higher HP. So that is good to note there. The thing with his, like, so his BT effect has a lot of good like buffs and auras on it, but the auras get better as the enemies are weaker on HP. Same thing with his FR, right? So part of what is FR that's really cool is that it does do a mass dispel on the enemies, which is awesome. It recalculates their resistances, which is kind of interesting. So it like makes it so that their resistances change, which could be helpful, right? And then he puts some debuffs down. So that stuff's all good. The part about his FR that I think is pointless is it's guaranteed to hit, which how often are you doing a fight where you're actually missing the enemy? Like the only time that this is an issue is if like you get blinded, right? That's the only time you really miss in the game. So what they're probably going to do, now I haven't looked ahead to Seymour's fight, they're probably going to do something where the enemy's going to be really annoying and like blind you or something, and they're going to make this guaranteed hit matter. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But don't like summon for this saying, I want it for the guaranteed hit, because it's pretty much a useless mechanic. Like dodging isn't a thing that enemies really do in this game. So I don't think I would worry about that. Now the FR HP condition is something I really don't like. So you get 40% when there are no buffs on the enemy, so that's pretty good. You just have to make sure you have a dispeller or somebody that can manage that, which Seymour does. So just 40% pretty much for free, that's cool. But then you get 10% more if you're attacking an enemy below 80%, and another 10% if you're attacking an enemy below 50%. So one thing I don't like is that it maxes out at only 60%, where we just had Lila set, which is a very flexible for free 70%. So that part is like not that great. Like I would like it to be, especially when you're playing with HP thresholds, I feel like you should be getting a lot more than that. Like he should at least be getting up to like 90% a shot or something, right? And then the other part is the HP threshold itself. So what this means is if you went into, say, FR right away and the enemies are at like 90%, which that's a very common percent to go in your first force time at, the max you can get is 40% per attack, which is like not that good. That's like not what a modern force time should look like, right? So the way you have to play Seymour, which I don't like, is that for both his BT effect and his FR, you want to use in like the second half of a fight, so when the boss is under 50%. The problem is the way a lot of people are playing default right now is you're doing these insane, like, you're thinking of like Enna, Crow, Renoa, Tifa. Your first burst phase is pretty much taking the enemy to dead. Or your first force time, right, is like taking the enemy to dead. So there isn't like this long drawn out fight where it's like, all right, I need to use the force time. Now I got him below 50%. Now let's do Seymour. Because that's kind of the way that you would want to use Seymour, right? So if you actually really love Seymour and want to use him effectively, what you do basically is Seymour's just kind of sitting there for the first half of the fight. What a lot of people do is they actually bring out Seymour for the friend unit for the first half of the fight. Bring the friend unit in. And then get your first force time off with a different character, get the enemies below 50%, have Seymour come back in at full power, and then you could use Seymour's FR for the second half. So if that sounds good to you, like you want to do that, then sure, you could summon for Seymour. But to me, when the way I think about of a character, like if my recommendation for a character is to immediately bring in the friend unit for them, that's telling me that that's not that great of a character. If that's the first thing you want to do is not use the character, I don't know that I can recommend you all summon for the character if you don't want to use them for the first half of the fight. So I think with Seymour, it just came down to they're just trying to think of more gimmicks or more ways to make the characters different, which I appreciate that. It just happens to be that this is a gimmick I don't like and I'm not a fan of, so I'm therefore not a fan of Seymour, right? Now, if you're a fan of Seymour and you want to set up team comps where you do it this way, he can be great, right? Because, like, you could say swap out Seymour for a Selfie friend, but instead of just walling out and getting Selfie out of there, let Selfie hang around for a little bit, take some turns, you know, take your time a little bit, or you Selfie wall out, but right before Seymour comes in, you go through another character's force time, something like that, right? So anyways, as you can tell, I was pretty negative on all the characters here, so obviously my recommendation is don't summon for Seymour. Not to mention, like, Yuna FR is coming, which I think is a better FR to have, a better character to have. And then we're all expecting Jack Garland after that, who's the next big hype DPS, so this is a good banner that you all can save on, right? The only person I'd recommend summon for this is if you are a diehard Seymour fan, and you understand how he works and want to use him that way effectively. Certainly, like, his damage is going to look good. Like, if you see a showcase of this guy when the enemies are below 50%, like, he's going to look very good. But don't get confused that he's going to do that the whole fight, right? I think at the beginning of the fight, he's not going to look that great. So I will definitely do, like, a new guide and, like, showcase on him. But I'm not going to have the FRBT because I'm not going to summon for it. But he'll still have his reworks for his base kit. So we'll look at him like base kit, what he's looking like. But he's definitely not a character I'd recommend. So anyways, guys, let me know if you're going to pull for Seymour, what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.